Welcome back to Inherited Dawn, a One Piece podcast. We are diving deep into chapter 227 today, titled Noland the Liar.
And we open on a scene that feels very familiar. The Straw Hats trying to put their ship back together after getting completely wrecked.
But this one hits different, because just when you think it's a simple gag chapter about fixing the Mary, Oda drops a single sentence from Sanji that completely recontextualizes his entire character.
It's a quiet bombshell.
Exactly. You know, if you're the kind of person who lives for those little details, the single lines of dialogue that pay off 100 chapters later, make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss the moment we connect this dot to something in Wano. Let's get into it.
We start with the crew patching up the Going Merry. Usopp is, understandably, distraught. He's calling Masira the orangutan and lamenting the state of his ship.
And I mean, from a shipwright's perspective, the damage is catastrophic. We're not talking about a few scrapes here. Masira ripped off the figurehead. He tore up the deck. Usopp is basically performing emergency surgery with a hammer and some scrap wood. He's in full panic mode, and you can't blame him.
He's treating it like a wounded friend, which is precisely how he sees the ship. His grief is palpable. He's not just upset about the damage, he's taking it as a personal failure.
And then Zoro, ever the pragmatist, just goes, "This thing is a piece of junk. We should just get a new one." And Usopp loses his mind. You can feel the tension there. It's not a joke to him.
It's a genuine conflict of worldview, and one that Oda will revisit in a much more devastating way later. To Zoro, a ship is a tool, and this tool is broken. A swordsman doesn't keep using a chipped blade out of sentimentality. He replaces it with a better one to achieve his goal. That's his logic.
Exactly. It's cold, but it makes sense from his perspective. But to Usopp, the ship is the heart of their journey. It was a gift. It's the vessel that carried them from their homes through the Grand Line. It's a symbol of Kaya's faith in him. It's everything. Telling him to get a new ship is like telling him to get a new friend because the old one got sick.
And you see it in the art. Zoro is casual, leaning on his sword, completely detached. Usopp is on his knees, surrounded by broken wood, and his face is just pure shock and betrayal.
But then Luffy steps in. He's been trying to help in his own chaotic way, but now he gets serious. He tells Usopp complaining won't fix it, and then he says it. He says the Going Merry is their nakama, their crewmate, and they have to take care of her.
It's the perfect thing to say. It's exactly what Usopp needed to hear, and frankly, what the audience needed to hear. Luffy often comes across as simple, but in these key emotional moments, he has an almost supernatural level of clarity. He understands the heart of the matter better than anyone.
It's the core of the Straw Hat philosophy in one sentence. The bonds aren't just between the people. They extend to the ship that carries them, the vessel of their dream. It's not an inanimate object. It's alive. It's part of the family. He validates Usopp's entire worldview. Usopp is just bawling, tears streaming down his face, and for 1 second, everything is perfect. They're all on the same page. The captain has spoken.
And in the very next moment, Luffy, now filled with renewed purpose and the spirit of craftsmanship, swings his hammer with all his might and smashes a giant hole in the deck.
The sound effect is just devastating. It's a bakoom that takes up half the panel. Usopp's scream of pure agony. His eyes bug out. His jaw unhinges. It's the perfect Oda 1-2 punch. Deeply emotional, beautifully stated character beat, followed immediately by the dumbest possible gag. It's flawless. You go from tearing up to laughing out loud in the span of 2 panels.
It's a masterclass in tonal control. The sentiment was real, but Luffy's application of that sentiment is flawed. He understands the why perfectly, but the how completely escapes him. He just doesn't
have the delicate touch gene. He's got 2 modes, don't touch and gomu gomu no pistol. There is no in between.
They do eventually get to their destination, and someone asks who they're looking for, and we get a very casual confirmation that yes, Robin is on the ship.
She's just there, leaning on the rail like she's been there the whole time. Oda draws her so nonchalantly. She's not hiding or being conspicuous. She's just part of the scenery now.
And what's wild is that the crew seems to have just accepted it. There's no big scene of them still being suspicious. She's just there.
Perhaps they're too preoccupied with the ship and the promise of a sky island to dwell on it. Or maybe Luffy's declaration that she wasn't a bad person was all they needed. For better or worse, they trust their captain's instincts. And it's immediately validated because she's the one who has the information. She says, Mont Blanc Cricket.
The name itself is interesting. Mont Blanc is a chestnut-based dessert. Given what happens to Luffy later, it feels very intentional.
It's a running theme with the family. I think Noland's own head was drawn to resemble a chestnut. It's a small detail, a visual pun that connects the ancestor and the descendant across centuries. It's Oda telling us, these two are cut from the same cloth.
Oh, for sure. Then Luffy and Usopp see it. A massive European-style castle on the shore. Ornate towers, grand walls, the whole 9 yards. They are completely losing their minds over how cool this guy's house is, talking about what a man's romance it is to live in a place like that.
The dream is magnificent. It's what you'd expect from the descendant of a legendary explorer. A grand home for a grand man, a testament to his family's legacy.
Until they get closer and realize it's just a giant flat piece of plywood, a facade. The house behind it is a tiny, ramshackle cabin built into the cliffside with half of it missing.
The reveal is brutal and hilarious. The grand romantic dream is literally a 2-dimensional cutout, and the reality is a broken-down hovel.
I love it. The dream is literally a facade. It's a perfect visual metaphor for what this whole arc is about. The grand storybook adventure versus the gritty, painful reality of chasing it. Cricket is living behind a picture of the life he thinks he should have, while the real man is in a wreck of a house. It speaks volumes about him before we even meet him.
Nami asks what kind of man Cricket is, what his dream is, and Robin reveals the local legend, a vast city of gold, hidden somewhere on the island of Jaya, left behind by Cricket's ancestor, Mont Blanc Noland.
And Nami's eyes immediately turn into berry symbols. Her ears perk up. You can practically hear the cash register sound effect in her head. She goes from cautious navigator to frantic treasure hunter in a split second. She tells Chopper to start digging with his horns. Not let's investigate, but get the treasure now.
It's her primary motivation. It's instinctual at this point. She hears gold and her brain short-circuits everything else. While she's caught up in that, she wanders inside the dilapidated house and finds a children's picture book. The title is Noland the Liar.
Such a brutal title for a fairy tale. Not The Adventures of Noland or Noland the Explorer, just straight up, this guy was a liar. Imagine that being the story you grow up with about your great-great-great-whatever grandfather. Usopp thinks it's cool, a book about a great liar, but then Sanji hears it from the galley, and he stops.
The panel is so effective. We just see Sanji from behind, holding a ladle and a single speech bubble with 3 dots. ... He's frozen. The entire mood shifts.
And then he speaks. He says he knows the story, that everyone in the North Blue knows it.
This is the moment. The needle scratch. The whole vibe of the chapter just shifts on a dime. I mean, we're in the Grand Line. They came from the East Blue. And Sanji just casually says, oh yeah, that's a story from my home, the North Blue.
And my brain just screeched to a halt when I first read that. I had to go back a few pages. Like, wait, what? Let's break this down. Sanji's entire backstory as we know it is the Baratie. He was a cabin boy on a passenger ship, Zeph attacked it, a storm hit, and they were stranded on a rock together. All of that took place in the East Blue.
Correct. He was a sous chef for Zeph who picked him up as a child from that shipwreck in the East Blue. Zeph is a famous East Blue pirate. The Baratie is an East Blue restaurant. Everything about Sanji's established history is rooted in that sea.
So how in the world did a kid from the North Blue end up on a passenger ship in the East Blue? Those seas are separated by the Red Line. You can't just sail from one to the other. You have to either go through the Grand Line and cross Reverse Mountain twice, which is insane for a passenger ship, or you get special permission from the world government to go through Marie-Jo, which is reserved for royalty and high-ranking officials. It's not a casual trip.
It's not. There are only two ways for a child to make that journey. Either he was born into a family of extreme privilege with government connections, or he was part of something far more clandestine, a refugee, a stowaway, perhaps even trafficked. Whatever the reason, it implies a level of world traveling and a significant backstory that Oda has kept completely under wraps until this very moment.
This isn't just a piece of trivia Oda is dropping. This is the first thread he's letting us pull on Sanji's past. And it implies a journey, a history we know nothing about. Something happened that took him from one sea to another as a small child. My mind is racing. Was he a noble? I mean, we've seen him use the alias Mr. Prince, which I always just thought was a cool name, but what if it was a hint? Was he a runaway? Was his family on that ship, and did they die in the wreck? It opens up so many questions with one line.
It also adds a layer to his personality. His refined manners, his knowledge of cuisine, his immediate deference to women, which feels almost like a courtly, knight-like code. These traits feel much more deliberate now, not just quirks, but potentially the remnants of a very different upbringing.
This is what makes Oda a master. We're on a zany treasure hunt, and he just slides in this massive piece of character lore so casually, it's almost easy to miss. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Sanji is not who we thought he was.
Well, Sanji is explaining the story of Noland, an adventurer from 400 years ago who claimed to find a city of gold, was hailed as a hero, brought his king to the island to show him, but the gold was gone.
And the king, feeling like he'd been made a fool of, had Noland publicly executed as a liar. Brutal. What a way to go.
We cut to Mocktown, to Bellamy and his crew, and Sarkis is telling the exact same story.
And they're laughing their heads off. It's the same story, word for word, but the tone is completely different. Sanji tells it like a tragedy. Bellamy's crew tells it like a joke. Then Bellamy reveals their whole crew is from the North Blue too. They grew up with the same story, but they took a very different lesson from it.
For them, Noland isn't a tragic figure. He's a cautionary tale, a punchline. Bellamy says their parents used to tell them, if you keep lying, you'll end up executed like Noland. For them, the story is a tool for enforcing conformity and realism.
It's so cynical. They've completely rejected the possibility that he was telling the truth. To them, the dream itself was the lie. And now they're laughing at the idea that his descendant, Cricket, is still chasing that lie 400 years later. They see it as pathetic. This whole scene is incredible writing. Oda establishes a shared cultural touchstone between our hero's crew and the villains, and then shows how their opposing ideologies lead them to interpret the exact same story in opposite ways.
It draws a very clear line in the sand. On one side, you have Luffy, who will punch a king for mocking someone's dream. On the other, you have Bellamy, who has built his entire identity around mocking them. The story of Noland becomes the philosophical battlefield for this arc. Is it a tragedy about a man who was telling the truth, or a comedy about a fool who got what he deserved?
Back at Cricket's house, Nami finishes the story with a pointed look at Usopp, and the pathetic liar died without becoming a true warrior of the sea.
That feels unnecessarily cruel, even for her. She knows exactly what buttons to push with him.
It is, but it's pure Nami, poking at Usopp's biggest insecurity to get a rise out of him. It's their weird dynamic. While that's happening, Luffy is, of course, completely oblivious to the deep historical and philosophical discussion. He's staring at the water because he sees bubbles, and then he just falls in.
He doesn't trip, he doesn't get pushed. The panel just shows him leaning over the edge of the broken dock, and in the next panel, he's gone. He just sort of topples over.
It's such a perfect, quiet little gag. And then a man erupts from the water. He's got a weird helmet on, goggles, a snorkel, and he looks furious. He's got the chestnut head. This is Mont Blanc Cricket.
He immediately assumes they're there to steal his gold and attacks. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't hesitate. His life is clearly one of constant paranoia and defending his hopeless quest. He goes right for Sanji.
And the speed, the guy's a monster. He moves like a blur. Sanji dodges, cool as ever, but then Cricket pulls out a pistol and fires. It's a genuine shock moment. This isn't a gag fight. He is shooting to kill. Nami and Chopper are terrified.
The tone shifts so quickly. It was a joke about Luffy falling in the water a second ago, and now there's a gunfight on the dock. Cricket is not a quirky old man. He's a desperate, violent fighter.
Zoro draws his swords to jump in. He's not letting his crewmate get shot at. He's about to unleash hell on this guy. The tension is cranked to 11, and before he can even take a step, Cricket just collapses, face down in the dirt, out cold.
The anticlimax is stunning. Everyone, the Straw Hats and the readers, are just stunned into silence. One moment he's a whirlwind of deadly force, the next he's a heap on the ground.
And then Usopp surfaces, dragging a soaking wet Luffy behind him who is completely unharmed and utterly confused.
And Luffy's explanation for what happened is maybe the most Luffy thing ever. He thought there was a chestnut floating in the water.
Mont Blanc.
Exactly. The family curse continues.
He leaned in for a closer look, and the chestnut turned into a man, Cricket, who grabbed him and pulled him under. Luffy, being made of rubber, was totally fine, but the sudden submersion seems to have triggered something in Cricket. It's so stupid and so perfect. Luffy foils a deadly attack by being an idiot who wants to eat a chestnut he saw in the ocean.
They bring Cricket inside, and Chopper, our brilliant doctor, immediately takes charge. He rolls him over, checks his vitals. This is Chopper in his element, and he diagnoses it as despairism, the bends.
Which Luffy, of course, immediately relabels as mystery symptoms. Never change, Luffy, never change.
Chopper's explanation is chilling. It's a sickness divers get from surfacing too quickly. Nitrogen bubbles form in the blood, causing immense pain and damage to the body.
He says normally it goes away with rest, but he says Cricket has been diving in a crazy way, so relentlessly that his body hasn't had any time to heal from the damage. He's been accumulating this damage for years.
The art shows it. Cricket is muscular, but his body is covered in bandages and old scars. This isn't the result of fights. This is the result of his work, his dream. He's literally killing himself for this, for his ancestors' honor. He's pushing his body past its absolute limit day after day, diving into the crushing depths, searching for a ghost.
And Chopper delivers the final, sobering line. In cases this severe, where the damage is this cumulative, the sickness can be fatal.
Man, this guy went from being a goofy punchline with a plywood castle to a tragic figure on the brink of death in about 10 pages. That's some masterful storytelling. He's not just chasing a dream, he's being consumed by it.
He's the dark reflection of the Straw Hat's own dreams. He shows the price you might have to pay. Luffy wants to be Pirate King, but he's willing to die for it. Zoro wants to be the world's greatest swordsman, and he's willing to die for it. Cricket wants to clear his family's name, and he is, quite literally, dying for it. He shows the physical cost of that unwavering dedication.
And the chapter ends with a picture of him with Masira and Shoujo. They're all grinning, arms around each other. So they're a crew. They're not just random salvagers who showed up. The Salvaging Brothers and the descendant of a great explorer. They're a team, united in this search.
It seems so. These three men are all united by this one 400-year-old dream. They might be presented as oddballs and antagonists at first, but this single picture reframes them as a found family, not unlike the Straw Hats.
What a chapter! It starts with slapstick ship repair, gives us a beautiful Nakama moment, transitions to a hilarious gag with a plywood house, and then ends with a man dying for his family's name, while also dropping a huge game-changing clue about Sanji's secret origin. Incredible density.
It really sets the stage, the dreamers, the cynics, and the forgotten history connecting them all. If you have your own theories about Sanji's past or the City of Gold, we'd love to read them in the comments.
All right, let's get into predictions for Chapter 228. I'll go first. Prediction 1. Cricket is going to wake up, and after some initial hostility, he's going to see Luffy's unwavering belief and decide to help them. He'll recognize a fellow dreamer, someone who doesn't laugh at the impossible, and they'll team up.
That makes sense. My first prediction, the Noland the Liar book, is incomplete. I think Cricket has the original version, or at least knows the true story. The version that's become a children's story has been warped over time, and the key to finding the gold is in the parts of the story that were left out. Noland wasn't a liar, but the circumstances were more complicated.
Ooh, I like that. A historical cover-up. Okay, my second prediction, that picture of Cricket with Masira and Shoujo isn't just a flashback. They're his allies, and they're going to show up next chapter to help. Maybe Bellamy makes a move on Cricket's house, and the new allies and the Straw Hats have to fight together to defend it.
A solid theory. My second prediction is a bit more specific. Cricket will reveal that he has a piece of Noland's original logbook or a map, and this clue will indicate that the City of Gold isn't on Jaya, it's above it. The reason the king couldn't find it is because he was looking in the wrong place, on the ground. Sky Island, bro, it's gotta be. We've been hearing about it since Logtown. This has to be the connection. Super! Okay, last one from me. Nami, being Nami, is going to try and draw up a formal contract with Cricket. She'll offer the Straw Hats help in exchange for a ridiculously high percentage of the gold, like 90%, and Cricket will just laugh in her face, leading to some classic negotiation shenanigans.
And my final prediction, Bellamy won't attack Cricket directly, not at first. He'll hear that the Straw Hats, the crew with the 100 million berry bounty, are at Cricket's house. He'll go there not for the gold, which he thinks is a joke, but to challenge Luffy and take his bounty to prove that the new age of pirates he represents is superior to the age of dreams. The conflict will be purely ideological.